Michael, I authorized the 150,000 this morning for the PR campaign.
Thank you. And we've already traded details on how to transfer the money, so it's in motion. Very grateful, Michael.
Terrific. On the CELC meeting this morning, Gene Woods brought up again this spike, Dina, in the Hispanic community. And I shared with them that we were making sure that that was a targeted portion of the awareness campaign.
Great, thank you. We're going to give it a few minutes because we did have a lot of people RSVP, and we're still missing a bunch, so we'll give it a couple more minutes.
And Dina, this is Uday here. We are working with Atrium Health for for the mobile testing team to come and test out the the population out there in the east side, and working with the Hindu temple to do some testing as well. So tomorrow, so I want to take this opportunity and thank Atrium for providing us the mobile unit at the Hindu Center.
Thank you, Uday. Thank you, Atrium, for providing that.
Our pleasure.
It's been, I know that the demand for testing has been really very, very high. So we know how hard it's been for both Atrium and Novant to meet that demand. So thank you.
Dina, this is Clay. Thanks for the advice you shared with me this morning. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Let us know if we need.
Oh yeah, you may be hearing from our health and safety team once they get their plan together to look it over.
Yeah.
For the technical advice. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. Looks like we have a bunch of folks on the call now, so we'll get started. So we be respectful of everybody's time. Again, I want to thank everybody for being here today. We have, I think, a bunch of stuff on our agenda. We are going to start with the media campaign. You know, we've been working on that for a few weeks now, and excuse me, Michael Smith and Jennifer Appleby on our team had agreed to sort of lead this subcommittee, and Shante, Rocio, and Uday have been participating in putting this together. Jennifer could not be here today, but Michael Smith is going to give us an update on where they are and really want some feedback from folks, ideas, things that we need to be considering as they move forward and start putting some of these things together. So Michael, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Dana. The work has really been focused so far on getting organized and expanding the table to make sure that we've got the right voices, the right perspective, the right teams, so that as we secure the grant, that we're able to take the creative and be able to hit the targeted communities that we aspire to hit with this vital information. So, as you shared, we had a good organizing meeting last week. We've had some good executive feedback from Jennifer Weber and Charles Bowman and Michael Marsicano, and we're grateful for that. And then we had a good working team meeting. Dina joined us for. It was Jennifer Appleby. We had some input beforehand from Peggy Brookhouse from LGA, Dr. Shante Williams, Uday Verde, Rocio Gonzalez. Chad Turner was not able to join us, but I hope he's able to participate on a going forward basis. But a good group, and we were able to really get some new insights as to the way we ought to be focusing this public service campaign. We also had Brian Collier from the Foundation for the Carolinas connected us with Rosanna Salidin Subrero, who's put together really a comprehensive strategy on reaching out to the Latino community. And we were glad to be connected with her, and the work that they've done will be very instructive to the way that we put together the campaign. We've made a commitment to working with the various chambers of commerce that are a part of this leadership roundtable, Black Chamber of Commerce, LGBT, Latino, Asian, and we look forward to working with them because they're going to have different tools to be able to reach those communities. And it just allows us to have a different kind of campaign. We've also we've struck a partnership with a firm called AC&M, and they have provided great insights. They've got a nice push for some quick survey work that they want to do. They've got a real expertise in reaching the Latino community, which is going to be really a big focus for the first phase of this campaign. And we've been able to, we feel like we've done a lot of churning and a lot of listening and a lot of trying to bring people together to make sure that we have the right approach. We're now ready to be organized. We've got kind of a first draft of program of work, budget, and an assignment of responsibilities. And, you know, depending a lot on those chambers that I called out, but then particularly relying on Ray Ward and AC&M to project manage they are donating pro bono the creative creation of the products, but then we'll invest in the placement of traditional media, social media, earned, owned. You know, Tom, I'd love to talk to you about things we might be able to do with the CRVA. We'd like to be able to reach out to the city and see where there's opportunities with transit and airport. Charlotte Center City Partners has some mediums within the Center City that we're going to donate, and we've got some relationships with some digital that we'll do. And then we've had good outreach from media channels that have said that they want to be a part of this. So the next step is now I'm going to execute agreements. The good news is Michael shared earlier that the COVID relief fund, we put in a request for $200,000. We asked for 150 now and 50,000 later, and they have granted us that money. We're going to use the Community Trust, which is a multi-functioned C3 organization that's part of Center City Partners. We're not going to take any fees. We're donating all of our work, all of our administration. We really want to get this into the creation of content and the purchase of media so that we get the message out. There will be a broad campaign level, but then there'll also be great targeting. And the plan right now is to make great use of radio, digital, grassroots, billboards, and we hope to have some for TV as well. I know I covered that quickly, but and I wish we were moving faster, but I think that by slowing down and getting more organized and doing more listening this week, and then also figuring out how do we put more listening into the creative process as the next step, that we'll end up with a better product that is more effective. I'm glad to answer any questions, Dina. Or if there's anybody from that team that met last week that would like to provide any insights or perspective to what I added.
Mike, this is Uday here. I know it's a great first start. The draft that we have come up with, it's looking good, and also the inputs that we got from the Latino community is is well placed. But one of the things we might have to look at is in the East Charlotte area, we have a large set of a refugee community, and that's one of the areas that we need to look at because of the income, that income variance that they have, and the messaging in that area might have to be differently, catered in my mind, So we can talk about it in our next team call. That's
Great.
something that I want to bring up.
Thank you. Great suggestion, and one that probably requires a different focus on the mediums we use.
Michael, hi, this is Gibby Harris with the Health Department. I'd love to be connected with y'all as you start developing content. There's some additional issues that are popping right now that we need to have addressed across the board, but especially in the Latino community. So it'd be great to have some conversation around that.
Thank you. Great offer. Appreciate it, Gibby.
Hey, Michael, this is Mark. Great work, and I'm excited about what you guys have going on. One of the things that I want to put on the radar as we're looking at the campaign, I think it's important for us to look at call to actions. I think that will absolutely help us be able to put some measurements. So particularly as it relates to social media, you know, one of the things that we want to be able to track are like our level of engagement, reach, exposure, URL shares or clicks and conversions so that we can really measure that effectiveness of the campaigns.
Thank you, Mark. I completely agreed. I think that we'll have Ray Ward probably develop the landing page so that as we trigger people to want to go out and secure more information, that they come back there, and that'll probably be a good spot for us to measure a lot of that. And then there's also tools we can use to figure out how effective the social's been.
Marcia or Shante, did you have anything you wanted to add since you're part of the team?
Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank the Communications Committee for providing us the opportunity to bring this message. I know that Dr. Rosana Saladin-Subero provided a very comprehensive report that came from a group that actually Gibby Harris was just in that phone call. A lot of different Latino leaders in the community have been meeting, and all of these organizations got together to provide some content. So we're hoping that this PowerPoint presentation that was presented, that some of the messaging will begin to be incorporated in the creative and in the graphics that are going to be designed by Ray Worth and ACNM. So I'm looking forward to, and I agree with Michael in regards to gathering the information. I think now we're ready to move forward and begin to deploy the messaging and how to make it accessible to the community.
Great, thanks, Rocio.
You know,
Shante? Yeah, I'm going to give Shante a chance. Thank you.
I'll second everything, and I think Uday makes a really great point about the refugee community. That's another community we've been interacting with a lot lately. I will say now that we are, on the other side of data gathering, definitely making sure we keep the focus up for media outlets of color specifically, that people are most interacting with, not just our, bar brushstroke, local mainstream outlets. I think is really going to be kind of the next phase of that. So I appreciate Michael's diligence in keeping those conversations going to make sure we're putting paid media buys into those outlets as well, because they are trusted sources that the communities are tapped into and do listen to.
Michael.
Dina, I have heard some people express, I wouldn't say a concern, but a worry that if the awareness campaign isn't followed up with actually, for instance, we know how important masks are, the distribution of the masks, that getting into neighborhoods and actually giving masks would magnify the effectiveness of the campaign, the awareness campaign. I don't know what to do with that, but it did ring some truth to me, and I just wanted to lift it up to you.
Well, thank you for that, and we can certainly think about how we can do that. I know Novant has been doing that. I'll ask Carol to talk about if Atrium's doing anything on that front. I know Novant is doing a large distribution of masks. We actually provided a bunch of masks to the protesters to make them available. The EOC was kind enough to provide. We had 400. We're trying to see if they still have any left. Sheriff McFadden has also been distributing masks during protests. So we've got some of that going on, but we need to, when we start to launch the campaign, any other outlets that we can create for mass distribution is going to be, I think you're right. I think it's going to be very helpful. Carol, do you know what Atrium's doing on that front?
Yeah, Dina, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. So yes, Yvonne has done a great job, honestly, with getting out there to these underserved areas. And in that respect, we've just literally placed a very large order for masks. But we, to this point, have been prioritizing, of course, the people who come onto the campuses and our patients, et cetera. So yes, there are plans that are being developed. But, thank you for asking, Dina. And I'll follow up on that because we absolutely want to do our share and then some. But that's something that we are just starting to get caught up on, frankly. So thanks for understanding.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's important, and I know Gibby, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but sort of just the overall, COVID fatigue that we're seeing in the community. We're not seeing people wear masks. And she can talk about how when they're calling people to do contact tracing, people are hanging up on them and they don't want to talk to them. And so there's a lot of that going on. And so we need to figure out how we try to get people to stay more engaged and how important that is. So this campaign hopefully will help us with that, but it is a problem and I think will continue to be a problem. Michael, you had said something about a survey. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, the firm at ACNM mentioned the idea of doing really a quick down and dirty kind of survey monkey survey to complement and ask some of the questions that were highlighted by Dr. Subero in the PowerPoint that she had created with that team. And it's something that if they do it, they're going to do it quickly and they'll do it within this next week and probably to a rather small audience, just to be able to refine and do some testing against some of the creative they're developing.
So who actually is the audience?
The Latino community is who they would be focusing on with that work.
So it's just the general public?
No, it would be focused on a small group of Latino audience, just to make sure that they're hitting with the right message.
But they're not specific industry people. They're just residents, I guess is my question.
Yeah, they would be a general audience among the Latino community.
And can you talk a little bit about what's happening with the LGA campaign and our campaign and any relationship there that we're trying to pursue? Or
yeah, so the special thanks to Charles Bowman and the reach out that he did to the statewide effort. We've also worked through LGA that did the creative work on behalf of the Restaurant and Lodging Association and also kind of statewide with their campaign for Count on Me NC. And the decision was made by the participants that are a part of the communications committee that we want to connect to that statewide effort because there will be media buys and those buys will be statewide. We want to connect to it, but we want to have our own form and our own creative. And the idea that we're thinking about right now is Count on Me CLT and connecting to it in a natural way, linking to each other. There's been good agreement from the group that is running that statewide campaign that they would love to have this connection, and that's how we're going to do it.
okay, terrific. Thank you. Other questions about the media campaign and where we are, things we should be thinking about that we're not thinking about?
Just one more point on the masks. Mark Gerald who's on the line, and by the way, Mark, I love that painting behind you. Mark has mentioned worked very hard on the COVID response fund to get us into more grassroots organizations. maybe somehow those folks could be distributors of masks to get it to if we had the masks, given as much as we've helped all those groups now, maybe we can ask of them to help distribute. So that's just a thought.
Thank you. Any other comments on the media campaign? Okay, terrific. The next item I wanted to bring out at this group today is, if you're not on mute, if you could be, that'd be great. Thank you. Is the Board of County Commissioners COVID-19 Recovery and Renewal Task Force, and I know I'm going to put Commissioner Durrell on the spot. If I call on him to talk a little bit about it, and I can sort of follow up. I don't know, Mark, if you're prepared to do that on this short notice.
Hey, Dina. Actually, no. I'm kidding.
Surprise!
Surprise.
I can talk about it if you want, and you could fill in.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'll add any additional color around it. But as you know, it's the brainchild of Commissioner Fuller, and really wanted to just some steps to what things should look like after this, as we're dealing with this and moving forward. So, Dean, I'll let you take it and add any additional commentary after that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
so
you.
Again, Commissioner Fuller did put this resolution before the Board of County Commissioners to create a recovery and renewal task force, which is to really look at what post-recovery looks like, but I think in a really different way. And I think this is, it's a little different than a lot of the other work that's going on in the community, because this focuses on access to health care and health disparities, mental and emotional health. There is a piece around economic recovery for small business, but it focuses on nonprofit recovery and human services, education and childcare, working families and vulnerable populations, housing and homelessness, jobs and workforce development, food security, and arts and culture. So it's a very broad scope, and sort of looking at a lot of the things that are within the county's purview. So if we were going to go ahead and respond to some of these concerns, these are things that naturally fit within the scope and the responsibilities of the county. The board is looking for a task force to actually put together recovery plans in these areas and make recommendations to the board about actions that they could take to help support these various sectors. We've already started. Yesterday was the first day that we're taking applications. The board is looking to have 23 members of the task force. There will be, of that group that they get, they will select a chair and a vice chair to help formulate these recommendations, and are looking for people who have experience or knowledge within these specific topic areas. So to help formulate that information and help form those policy recommendations. People can put an application in online at the county's website at mecnc.gov. There's a advisory board application they have to fill out, and we are also asking that people put their resume, attach their resume, so that the board has an opportunity to look at those applications and their experience at the same time. The board will start making its first round of appointments on June 23rd. And if we're not able to round out the task force on June 23rd, then they'll make the final appointments on July 7th. And so really encouraging as many people as possible to apply. There's a lot of people on this task force that have experience in these areas. Please push this out. I attached the resolution to the agenda material to really push that out to all of your networks for people who may be interested and want to participate. We're really trying to get a very broad pool of folks to want to participate on the task force. We expect that the task force will work for 1 year. We think that's how long it will take, so that would be the time commitment. Don't really have a sense of, again, how often they would meet or any of that, but we're thinking it's a 1 year duration. And of course, the task force would have support from county staff and the expertise of our county departments to help formulate some of these policies and recommendations that they would make to the board. So again, happy to answer any questions. I know a few people have already put their applications in, because I've gotten some texts from folks who have expressed interest. So we're hoping for a very good, for a really good turnout on that. So that, with Commissioner Jarrell, anything else you'd like to add now?
Thanks, Dina. Just real quick. So I think it's important to point out that one of the drivers for Commissioner Fuller was really around the disparities that the disparate outcomes that we're seeing in the racial disparities. And so I know another thing that he really wants this task force to do is to look at the deployment of the CARES Act funding that we've received as well. There's a time frame on that. So I know he wants some recommendations there as well. And so you covered all the bases, and we do need it to be diverse in multiple ways, skill set and otherwise. So thank you for that, Dina.
You're welcome. And the other thing I'll point out is that the action plan that the task force puts together will incorporate the recommendation of this Business Leaders Roundtable. So again, board very supportive of the work this group is doing and want to make sure that whatever work we do here is incorporated into the plans and recommendations that the board hears from the task force. So really looking forward to that. I think it's going to be a great effort. And again, these are areas that there's not a lot of people really looking at in terms of recovery. So I think we can add some value there. Any questions on that, or comments or recommendations that I can bring back to my board about how that might work? I know Michael, he wanted to try to frame it a little bit around the Economic Opportunity Task Force, because that was really good work. So any advice you can give us on how to advance it that way, I think would be really helpful. All right. The next item on our agenda is to talk.
Sorry, Dina.
Yeah.
Just a question. I may have missed it. You may have said it. Who's on the selection committee for those applications, or who's choosing?
The Board of County Commissioners will review the applications and they'll make the selections.
Perfect. Thank you.
So again, we always talk about the data, so we're gonna do that. But I did want to give Jennifer Weber an opportunity to talk about the training modules that we put on our website, and give everybody some updates on that and see how we can expand that reach a little bit. So Jennifer?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Dina. You'll all recall that as a part of the toolkits that we were preparing, one of the things that we rolled out in conjunction with the sector-specific toolkits were training resources, in light of the fact that a lot of small businesses don't necessarily have the resources or the access to training, and it's mobile enabled training. And so we're just not seeing a lot of engagement on the site. And I actually have a call with our partners, and this was a partner of mine when I was at Lowe's. They do really good work, and they've been willing to kind of do a lot of this and make this available pro bono. Because of the relationship that I and Lowe's has had with them over the years. It gives them good visibility too. But what I'd like is feedback. I don't know if any of you have tried to access it. I don't know if you've received any feedback. Maybe it's a function of we haven't communicated it effectively enough. It could also be a function of there's just an awful lot going on. In addition to COVID-19, we've had a lot of community concerns around protests and things like that, and other things that have taken more prominence in terms of what's weighing on leaders, and perhaps this just hasn't been a focus, and it's as simple as that. But I'd welcome any feedback on what we can do to improve engagement on the site. Do you want me to, I could also get a link sent out to it and give you all an opportunity to kind of peruse it.
Jennifer,
Yes.
this is Clay Armbrister. I think that would be great. As I just concluded a meeting with my team, and as we're thinking about opening up, the big thing is the training. And I said these things are available to us. And so if you could send that link out, that would be great, because as we look to reopen, we're going to have training required of everybody who steps back onto the campus before they step on the campus. And I actually was thinking about that site. So it's just been, I think it's more of timing than it is anything else, but sending that link again would probably be very helpful to everybody.
Okay, perfect. I can do that. I can send it out to this group. And if you could all help me by distributing it across your channels, I think that would be one way that we could communicate it. But then as you get on there and you use it, if there are ways that we can improve and enhance it, Exonify is open to that as well. So I have a call with them this afternoon. I'll let them know that those are the next steps. Thank you, Clay, for that. Anybody else?
So Jennifer, we hold 500 nonprofit endowments across the region, and we can send an email to them with the link and
Okay.
get all of those folks. So that's just another idea of getting it out I hadn't thought of.
Okay, perfect.
Hey, Michael, we should also send it to anybody who makes application to the COVID relief fund, either recipients or applicants.
Well, that's a great idea.
That's a great idea.
And thinking about that, since the foundation's running for the city the $30 million small business grants program, we could send it out to all those applications.
Yeah, make it a requirement that they read it before they apply.
There will be a test.
Michael, did you have something?
I said, Charles, should there be a test at the end after they've read it?
I think you would never pass it, Michael. So no.
We went to the
It's
same
got to be something
once,
simple
yeah.
enough for Michael Smith to score 50 on.
I shouldn't poke the bear, should I?
Hey, Jennifer, I just wanted to add to that, as we talked with Exonify last week or the week before, whenever that was, that there is a registration component to it. So I think as we all start to share across our membership and our investor base, it's important to recognize that there is kind of a landing page that required from the register that might throw some of those people off. So just encourage them. And we've asked them to provide some better context around that landing page so that they know what you're signing up for and it isn't a phishing type of scam thing. So just an awareness piece on that.
Thanks, Janet. Yeah, great point. That was something that came out of the conversation Janet and I had with them. Absolutely. Okay, perfect. I'll get it sent out to all of you. I'll talk to them this afternoon and appreciate all your help in kind of getting the word out, because we did want this to be a resource to nonprofits, small businesses, the university system, anybody who could leverage it.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I did take a couple of the modules, and I think they're really well done. They're really cute. They're fun and informative. So, and it's not heavy training. I think it just gives some additional information and some really good tools for people to use. So hopefully we can get that out more widely. So now that's not something, and maybe you can ask them this, that can be translated into other languages.
I actually did ask them that. I asked them if it could be translated, as a starting point into Spanish, and they said they're not at that point yet to be able to do that, unfortunately. And it'd be a pretty big undertaking given how many modules they actually have. I was a little surprised by that. I hate, I didn't know that when I was at Lowe's, because Lowe's has a lot of just bilingual, multilingual employees. And so they said that as they get to that point, they can certainly enhance it.
Okay. That's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other questions about the training? Okay. So now I'm going to turn it over to Gibby to kind of talk us through the data and what we're seeing. And, we sort of feel like we're at a kind of a critical point. The data, in terms of what the data is showing and what we're hearing from the state. And Raynard is on as well, our deputy health director. So I'm going to turn it over to Gibby first, and really want to have a good conversation about this and what we're seeing, because I think these will lead to other opportunities for us to talk about, messaging and other things to the community. So Gibby, why don't you kick us off?
Okay, thank you. So as of noon today, we've had 6,012 confirmed cases in Mecklenburg County. What that represents is over at least the past week, we have had triple-digit cases every day in Mecklenburg County. So that number continues to go up. We've had 122 deaths. That number we had a short period of time where we did not see any deaths. It was almost 5 days. But unfortunately, that's not the case over the past week. Those numbers have gone up as well. And we continue to have 19 outbreaks in our congregate living settings. that we continue to spend a lot of time and energy working with to make sure they've got the equipment they need and that they're doing what they can to protect the individuals that are in those congregate living settings. I guess the basic news, though, is that our trends are not going in the right direction. Our positivity rate continues to go up. So as we test more, which we are doing quite a bit of, we are seeing more positives in those that we're testing. Our hospitalizations continue to go up. They're not spiking, and our hospitals are still in what they consider to be green status. So they're not in danger of not being able to care for the people that are coming in. But we are seeing increased numbers in COVID patients in the hospital settings right now. The big news this week was really around testing. The federal government, the task force at the federal level, had conversations with the folks at the state late last week and recognized Mecklenburg, not Mecklenburg, but well, they did recognize Mecklenburg, but they started with the state. There are a handful of states who are seeing increases in hospitalizations and numbers that task force is particularly concerned about. North Carolina is one of those. And the response was, you need to really amp up your testing. And numbers were being thrown around. Dina and I had a conversation with Secretary Cohen on Monday, and she was pretty adamant that we needed to do 20,000 tests a day in Mecklenburg County. We are currently averaging a little over 2,000 a day. So that's a heavy lift. Now, we've had conversations with the state since then. We did have a meeting yesterday with our testing partners, our main testing partners in the county and the state, and the state has backed off of that 20,000 number. But they are asking what's reasonable, and they are wanting us to increase our testing availability. So we are having those conversations about what it would take to do that, what kind of resources need to come into the county to allow us to increase our testing. And the state has told us that they will make resources available, but we're still working through that with them right now. In addition to that, they came out with guidance on Tuesday morning that anyone who has been involved in a mass gathering, especially those involved in protests, should be tested. Unfortunately, many of those have been turned away because they're asymptomatic, and that hadn't fit into the criteria that's been provided so far. We did have conversations with the state today, and CVS Pharmacy, who does have 9 sites right now in Mecklenburg County and are opening, I think, 5 more tomorrow morning, can test asymptomatics if they mark on the form that they are a high priority based on local or state public health guidance. And right now, those folks that fit into, I attended a protest or some other mass gathering fit into that category. So we're pushing those folks towards CVS right now, mainly because our hospital systems are busy just taking care of what we've been having coming in for testing. We heard that from them yesterday, that they're at capacity and need some additional resources to be able to expand. And the other part of this that I need to be clear about is testing for the sake of testing isn't going to get us anywhere. If we're not doing the work after that, and that work includes case definition, case investigation, as well as contact tracing, but also providing, if needed, resources for people. If we tell somebody to stay home for 10 days and they have no food, they can't access their medication, they're at risk of losing their house, or they're going to go to work regardless of what we tell them. That's a hard message to give. So there's layers of things that need to happen after the test is done. So we've got to make sure that we're putting in place the things that that are going to support folks as they get tested. And I think everybody is aware that our Latino numbers have gone up significantly over the past month. They were a small percentage of our tests up until about a month ago, and then that has they're hanging around in the 34 to 37% range of all of the tests, positive tests that we've seen in the county. And as Dina mentioned, we are seeing COVID fatigue, whether that's because that's with people not wearing masks, people not social distancing, but also when we are having people not answer our calls. When we try to contact them to let them know that they've been exposed or their test was positive. And some people, when they do answer the telephone, have been hanging up on our staff. They don't want the message that we have to give them. So when I talk about content for some of the media campaign, I think we need to be talking about the importance of being able to comply if indeed they've been exposed or are positive. So those are some of the things that we're dealing with right now, and starting to develop plans around. We'll have more conversation with the state this afternoon, and they are working on helping us figure out what resources they can make available to expand testing, as well as contact tracing. So we're working on all of those issues, but the media campaign is going to be critical as well in getting the message out. The question was, we could come up with 20,000 tests if they give us enough resources, but are 20,000 people a day going to show up to be tested? So again, it's a lot of it's about messaging.
And I think it's important for this group, being the Business Leaders Roundtable, it's things like this that are really going to prevent us from being able to go to phase 3. Because having conversations with Secretary Cohn, we asked her, if we were going to go to phase 3 today, would you go? And she said no. We asked her, well, would you pull back on restrictions? She said probably not, but we wouldn't continue to loosen them. So, as we are business folks and we want to do what's right for our community, compliance and our ability to get past this is really going to impact our ability to really continue to reopen our economy. And we also want to keep people healthy. It's really twofold, obviously. So, we do continue to be concerned about how we get people to pay attention to these important messages about, you need to stay home if you're exposed, and answering our calls and all the other things that we're asking people to do. So any thoughts on that? Any advice? Any things you think we should be doing that we're not doing?
Dina, I have a question.
Yeah.
And Gibby, I do think it's going to be great if you have your eyes all over the messaging, because now that you've given us more context on what you're seeing, I really think your perspective is going to be helpful in terms of public service messaging, that it'll really help strengthen it. But my question is, I think before we had the kind of availability to testing that we have now, I think we all anticipated that there were a lot more cases out there than what we knew about, because we just didn't have adequate testing. How much do you feel like the spike is attributable to that? We're just doing a whole lot more testing versus people are not, they're just not being safe, and we've got to continue to reinforce that.
That's a really good question, and one that I don't think we've got a very solid answer to. I think it's a combination of the two. We did know that we had more in the community. We've got community spread. There's no doubt about that. But as people are more and more exposed in our community, we know there are going to be more people infected too. So I think it's a combination of the two. How much each one of those is attributable to the increased numbers we're seeing is just not something that we can, that we have the ability to speak to right now.
Okay. And I think what you would say, we talked a little bit about this before, we are concerned about the protests and people who have not been social distancing and not have been wearing masks during the protests. That's why we're trying to provide them. But we are maybe thinking we may get even a bigger spike as a result of that. Obviously, we have to wait and see, which is why it's even so much more important that people do follow the guidance and cover their face and wash their hands and do all the things that we need them to do.
Hey, a couple of things. I don't want the point to be missed that Gibby just made about making resources available if we're going to give people the advice to stay home, because we can't say stay home and starve. So I really do appreciate you saying that. And as a representative from the Black Chamber, my job is to make sure that we're petitioning the county as well as the city with all of this grant funding, especially as it relates to COVID-19, to make those funds available for people who aren't a business and aren't, a nonprofit, but really are having to sit at home. And so I really appreciate you driving home that point. I also want to say I want to I'll try to finesse what I'm saying here, but I'm seeing a lot of messaging in particular about the protesters being the cause of these spikes. And we know that those numbers that we're seeing today aren't directly in relation to that. So I want to be careful not to link in an isolated way the people that are out protesting with the increased numbers, because we do know that since Labor Day, people have been heading to the beach and congregating and, out and about. I needed to make a market run, and I can say 80% of the people in the store had no face covering. So I want to make sure that we're not pigeonholing our, placement of increased activity on a specific group. And I will say, from a lot of the images that I have been seeing, as well as being on the ground, the protesters are complying. I do thank Dina for making masks available to those who did not have them. But I want to just be really clear that we're not creating a direct link, because of these protests, this is why we're seeing this, because that's what I've started to see in the media. And it's really concerning for me, because the civil discourse that's happening is very important. And I don't want it to all of a sudden be those people are causing us to not go to phase 3 or keeping my business from opening. And I know no one said that.
No, I appreciate you saying that, because I think you're right. I certainly did not mean to imply that. So I accept what you're saying, and I agree with you, because there's a lot going on in the community, and everybody has to take responsibility for their own actions, regardless of where they are and where they're going. So thank you for that. But I think another point I wanted to make, to Gibby's point, is, how do we develop that infrastructure so that if, folks do make a call to somebody, saying that you've potentially been exposed, we recommend that you stay home. What's the pathway to get, to ask those questions and get them to services? And we need to think more about how we do that, because I think it is really important. And I think the resources are there, but it's a matter of how we're connecting folks to those resources when they're faced with having to make this decision. So any ideas that people have around that is going to be really helpful too, because the contact tracers can only do so much. So, and we can only ask them to do so much. So what is that soft or handoff to make sure that we get people where they need to go?
Dina, this is Rocio. I know that everybody is extremely involved, and I don't know if there's a lot of background noises. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I know that everybody's very involved with purchasing items online and delivery. I was just thinking that if we were to perhaps provide, I don't know, I'm just kind of thinking out loud, maybe like a $20 care package where once the vulnerable community has been identified as being positive for the virus, perhaps part of the phone call is to let them know that they will be receiving this package within a day or two that has, I don't know, something that would help them. I don't know, it could be Gatorade and aspirin or whatever they need at that point to help them understand that we are so concerned for you and your family, and we really want you to stay home, that we are going to send this to your residents so that you can be comfortable and stay and protect yourself. And this is to tie up with what Gib is saying, and also to support Shantae's message about, yes, we need to provide the resources to those that are being asked to stay home to protect themselves. So just kind of thinking out loud.
Yeah, Rocio, I think that's a great point. There actually is an organization that did something similar to this a bit about midway through, called Heal Charlotte. And they delivered care packages that included cleaning supplies, that included, a mask, that included, other necessities to keep people from having to spend extra funds, but also And they were able to bring on partners like Walmart and Lowe's to provide these things. So I think that's a great idea, especially thinking and tailoring it a little bit more closely to, you've now been, you've tested positive. Here are some things to get you started and help you feel better. That might be a really good gesture. And I'll see what resources we have to support that, even if it's also adding in some grocery gift cards, for example, so that people have a way to feed themselves if they're going to have to stay home. So I think that's a great idea.
So one thing that we have been doing is we've got some social workers that are in contact with everybody who is positive at this point, and many of the folks that have had to quarantine, to find out what their needs are and trying to hook them into services in the community to make sure they've got what they need. The issue is as we continue to test more and find more, we've got limited ability to keep that up. And we also need to make sure that we're connecting with all the resources that are out there. So we'll be having more conversation about what that looks like, and seeing what other nonprofits and others in the community are available to help with that as we move forward. So thank you for that.
Hey, Dina, this is Mark. I want to say thank you for having this robust discussion. It's really, really important. One of the things that I've tried to advocate for, Michael Marsicano touched on this earlier, and I thought it was an excellent point. This is an opportunity for us to really engage and leverage with our grassroots nonprofits that are really boots on the ground in the community, that have penetration into the people that we need to touch. And and when I say it's an opportunity, I really believe that as opposed to waiting for them to apply to assist, there are groups that we could bring in, within a week and provide a framework to say, this is what we need. This is the infrastructure that we're providing. We want this level of delivery within these specific communities. We know where they are. And especially our most vulnerable communities, I think we could bring them in once we apply that framework, and we can put them to work tomorrow. And I think each of us know in our areas who a lot of those groups are, and we can expand it and broaden it as needed.
Mark, this is Uday here.
I'm in for that.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like Uday, Rocio, we talk about this a lot. I talk about it with Michael. But we have the orgs that are actually ready to go tomorrow if we just gave them direction and obviously the funding to make it happen for us. So I think that's a discussion that maybe a subcommittee to work on that.
And Mark, this is Uday here. There are some organizations that do have some mass and other resources as well. We can tap into it. Once you build the framework, maybe we can pull in some of the resources that are available in the community and channelize in the right way and from a distribution point of view.
That's great.
Absolutely.
Commissioner, I just wanted to add to that too, that the Alliance has a ton of volunteers from the business community that we've long had in our stable of things from past campaigns that I know they'd be delighted to help be boots on the ground to extend the capacity of some of the nonprofits in the county who'd be willing to help. And I also didn't want to lose Shantae's point earlier about making sure that we're not pigeonholing the folks who are out there doing these peaceful demonstrations, and that if there's a way, Michael Smith with the communications committee, to make sure that some of that messaging gets embedded in how we're practicing and adhering to public health guidelines for those who choose to be out there, I think it would be important to integrate those 2 points.
Thanks, Janet. I agree.
Thank you.
Dina, another point that I would make in the conversations about protests or not protests, or people wearing masks or not wearing masks, this is just anecdotally, but wherever I go or whatever I watch on TV, it seems to me the breakdown is by age. That people who are older are wearing masks with greater frequency, and younger people are not. Whether I look at the protest crowd or I look at the grocery store or I don't know if there's any evidence of that. I don't know if everybody else has had that experience in their life travels. But do we have an age challenge on this this whole awareness thing?
Well, I think we do, because I think the data would totally bear that out, is particularly in the Hispanic community. 40, almost 50% of the cases in the Latino community are between the ages of 20 and 39. So it tells you that they're the ones that are getting more infected, and probably because they're the ones that are potentially not wearing face coverings and not staying home if they don't feel well. And even in the African American community, um, you know, almost 60% are under the age of 59. So again, I think you are seeing that younger people, they always feel invincible. And so, yeah, I think that has to be part of the messaging. And I gave this age data to the communications committee so that they could target the messaging age appropriate as well as, ethnically. But I do think that's definitely part of it.
Hey, Dina, this is Uday here. Being working in the grassroots organizations and at the community level, right? Last 6 weeks or 7 weeks, what we have noticed is the biggest. It's not. I don't know about the age, but it's definitely the economics, right? People that doesn't have the means to buy basic minimum mass, right? That is a truth. So we need to have organizations that can come out and, as Commissioner Mark has already pointed out, that we need to create a framework and get these resources out to people because they don't have the means to buy them. They're not available we all know in the community. If you go to a store, they're not available. Even if they're available, they're too expensive. So that kind of puts a deterrent in for people to go and buy them, right? So we need to see like how we're gonna make it available. I know the messaging is a good thing, but if they don't have the means to buy them, then how are they gonna get them, right? So bottom line is that we need to see like how we can create that framework and bring in organizations that have the resources and also put in some resources from our side to make that messaging even more powerful, because we can say like these are the places where you can come and get them for free, and then people will come out and avail those resources. So that's one. And number two is going back to Gibby, and she mentioned about contact tracing. Are there any technologies that we are leveraging on that, or is it how are we doing that contact tracing today?
So what we do is we call by phone. We're contacting people by phone, and we know that everybody's not available during the day, so we're calling in the evening, on weekends. So it's a pretty robust process of trying to get in touch with people. But I mean, I'm guilty of this. If I see a number pop up and I don't know the number, I don't always answer it. I figure if somebody really needs me, they're going to leave me a voicemail. And so we leave voicemail, ask them to contact the health department. But lots of folks don't like to get a message to please contact the health department. And so that's, they don't always call us back. We keep trying. And then the other situation that we've run into recently is we get them on the phone and we let them know what we're calling about, and they're just hanging up. And it's not everybody. We're looking at the data right now to see what percentage of folks where that's happening. So we'll have a better idea of that in the next week or so. But it's a little demoralizing to staff as they're trying to get in touch with people to give them the information that they need, and they're not even willing to talk to them on the phone.
So, Gibby, on that point, right? I've been talking to various leaders in different countries also, especially countries like South Korea, Taiwan, Malaysia, where they have successfully implemented some technologies, which is not like as pervasive as what they have been doing in China and all, but specifically targeting bigger companies where they can implement RFID or other forms of tracing within the company to see if there's any contact. If people are infected, then they can trace out whom they have contacted in the last week or so, and so that they can be quarantined. Are there anything of that discussion happening?
Thank you for that. So there are a couple of things. Number one, when people are comfortable with it, we will ask them, the person that's tested positive, to be in touch with their friends, their family, their neighbors, whoever, and let them know that they've potentially been exposed. So at least that information is getting to them that way. Some people are comfortable doing that, and some would prefer us to do it. But the other thing that we implemented this past week is a technology platform that allows us to send emails and text messages as well. So we're looking at a number of different ways to get that message out. Different people, my kids will respond to a text message much faster than they will to a telephone call. So just trying to look for the different ways of getting information out to people. If you've got other ideas, we're wide open.
I'm actually there was one MIT is actually doing some research. I can look into that and see where they are. They are trying to come up with a approach on using Bluetooth to do the contact tracing. Let me connect with them and see where they are, and maybe if it's a good thing, then we need to see like how we can partner in as from a county perspective. I'll be in touch with you and Dina once I hear something from them. Yeah.
Thank you.
So we're at the end of our time. Another really good conversation today. I'm going to follow up with Commissioner Jarrell, Rocio, Uday, and Shante about these organizations in the community that you think are the ones that would be helpful in getting some things out, and then we can figure out what these care packages or whatever might look like. And we've got some CARES money available, and we might be able to carve some out for this purpose. I think this would be a good way to make sure we're connecting people with services. We can also put a resource guide in there to help them connect with housing and other kinds of services. But I'll follow back up with you. If anybody else is interested in participating in that work, let me know. But I think this would be a good next step for us to kind of focus on making sure we're getting people connected as we move forward. So I'm going to try to wait to have our next meeting until the communication team potentially has something to show. So it may be a bit of time, but we'll try to move as quickly as we can. And with that, thank you everybody for being on the call today. It's always good to see and hear everybody. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina.
Thank you all.
Bye, everybody.